My push is, let's establish cultural centers where there are cultural museums, where we capture individuals who have made major contribution not only to Ukambani but to the region. You have heard of people like Sio Kimau. A few of you may think these are contexts that are not for sure, for real. But this woman dreamt. She saw a snake coming from the lake all the way to the other lake. And these are facts. So we cannot say that we should ignore this. No, we shouldn't. The other day I was talking to some people, and there are people who were saying there is a stone called Nzambani in Kitui, where if you go around it 7 times, you change your gender. So people will always say, but have you done it? There was a place where some people over the weekend were telling me, Prof, by the way, have you gone around it? I understand that you have gone around 7 times. And I told them, yes, I went around it 7 times. Then when I finished 7 times, clockwise, I went back again counterclockwise 7 times. So I am who I am. And the young girls, of course, were clapping and so forth. So these are things that are for real. And I want you to go and read this and include it. There is a place in Machakos, and where there is negative gravity, the negative gravitational pull, where water flows up the hill, and even cars. Now, science will begin to ask a lot of questions. Go and ask and find out from the Kamba community, how did this place become like this? And the story is very interesting, but I will not tell you now, because I don't want you to stop seeing me. So I will tell you later.
In some countries, like America, in Europe, some of the richest people are not lawyers, are not doctors, are not professors like me, but they're artists. They're actors, they are filmmakers, they are musicians, etc. Let me come back home. I think, if you ask me, I will just give an example of a real situation. I think Ndabuki, the man called Churchill, is doing very well, better than many doctors, engineers, and professors in this country. Through culture, he is a stand-up comedian. See that? I think Maria, what is called this man, the musician, somebody was Maria. Ken was Maria. I don't think Ken was Maria is begging in Machakos. I think Ken was Maria can buy food for the children, etc., etc., etc. And I can tell you today in the world, what are called creative industries are minting so much money. In Nigeria, Nigerian films, poor as they look to some people, is only second to oil in Nigeria. It makes so much money. In America, musicians make so much money. So why wouldn't I be? Because I would very much love to be part of, Uwezo teaching. It's because I would love to empower young men and women to make decent living by becoming writers. Who are the one who makes good money? Imbuga made money. Mahilu makes some substantial amount of money. On and on and on. There are so many people, many of the people who have gone into journalism in this country actually started as artists. They started by participating in the Kenyan Drama Festival. On and on and on. So can you make a living through art? Yes.
Mama, he always come out, he always went out, he always went to public where in his regalia, Masai regalia. Then, thereby, if you look at it today, tourists are trooping in the Masai land. And when they are doing that, to see the culture of Masai, by doing that, economically, they are intensifying the economy and the income of the Maasai. So, that is what we should all do, we Kamba people. We need tourists to come and see us. If they come today, what do they see? Nothing. Have we done us for them to come and be entertained? They isn't.
You know, there are some places in America where if you want to book a seat, you want to buy a ticket today. There are some countries where you want to buy a ticket for a play. This is today 6th October. You know what they will tell you? They will say, yeah, we can sell you a ticket, but you know what? The ticket that is available is on the 11th of November 2022. You know why? Because they are fully booked. Here, when people go on stage, it's only for 3 days, 4 days. There are places where a production can go on for a year, for 2 years, for 13 years. And we shall get there probably. But for us to get there, we need to be serious in training. So that whoever writes drama is trained. Whoever is an actor, actress is trained. Whoever is doing music is trained.
These FM stations have really brought into the know that there is content in ethnic communities that is valuable, that is enjoyable, that can solve some of the conflicts and problems that we are having in society.
Poems or poetry should be brought to the fore through schools, through individual performances. And by the way, Wangai, I need to see people like you getting recognized.
We train them not only in terms of the techniques, but also in terms of discipline. Because, Professor, one of the things that we lack in this country is discipline. I mean, people become actors and they are all over the place. You know, they start misbehaving. Before you know, they have died from HIV AIDS, God forbid. In other places, there are people who are musicians, people like Ken Rogers. You perform for 40 years, and out of those 40 years, every night you have eaten dinner with your wife. Literally. You know, that kind of discipline. So what we need to do is to train young people, to empower them to be able to survive, because you can really make substantial money through music. You can make substantial amount of money through proper serious painting. You can make a substantial amount of money through proper sculpturing. You can make money through acting. You can make money through writing, etc., etc., etc. So you can count on me.
The value of knowing the language, that being fluent in this language can get you a job. Being fluent in this language can make you a mediator. Being fluent in this language can make you a translator of particular materials. And being fluent in this language can make you an extension worker.
Yes, people make living through art.
This culture will not go anywhere if you don't empower the speakers economically. You have to eradicate poverty.
They make millions of shillings, and we can train somebody in Machakos, in Ukambani. We can train some Mulonzia. We can train some Kalondu to become a top-notch musician and make more money than the senator of Machakos, make more money than the governor of Tharaka-Nithi.
We should promote our culture, but it talks mainly about indigenous culture. And what they mean is, for example, indigenous foods, indigenous ways of celebrations, indigenous ways of marriage, indigenous herbal medicines, and how we relate to each other and how we relate to others. So culture is extremely important.
Universities should teach Kamba culture. Why not? And if they don't, what else will they teach?
Kikamba, as a language, is the library. It's the library that stores the information and the knowledge of Kamba people. You know what? There might be something that the Kamba know about human medicine that the professor mentioned and the Johnson Nairobi does not know.
Yeah.
That information is stored within the Kamba language. There is something the Kamba man knows about how to treat a sick cow, sheep, or goat that probably a professor of veterinary medicine in Upper Capital does not know. Now, when you lose Kamba, and I'm using Kamba as an example, when you lose Kamba, Mutisia, if you lose Kamba, you know what you're doing? It's like burning an 800-year-old library. It's like you are burning, just think of a library in Europe, which has so much collection, and you are burning it. And that is why, because you might not be aware of this, that's why UNESCO is so particular about indigenous languages. Why? Because that information in Kamba language is not only for the Kamba, it's for humanity.
It hurts me because you go to our shops here, you find medicine from China, medicine from India. In universities in Europe, they are teaching Ayurvedic medicine from India. And yet, we had medical herbal trees in this country. We are not protecting those endangered herbal shrubs and medicines and so forth. To me, it's extremely important. And one of the things that I have always thought about is, as a community, we need to establish community cultural centers in Ukambani. Not just for us, but also to expose other communities into coming and finding out what are Kambas. How did we used to eat? How did Kambas, for example, determine who to marry and who not to marry? We had clans, and at least in Ukambani, some clans were not supposed to get married to each other, because then the children will have challenges, because it's like marrying two sisters and so forth. So these are things that we need to begin to reconsider as a community. We need to begin to own our culture, and to own our culture, we must establish cultural centers. We must begin to play cultural music, drums, cultural dances, cultural foods, and so on. Because this is, to me, the basis upon which we will survive as a community.
This is why you are not supposed to bomb libraries, even during war. It's against, you don't bomb libraries. Because that information is not only for the Kamba. If you lose that information, you lose it for humanity. I will tell you an example. In Kitaraga, we have a saying, Iran teme neoji kirawa. Iran teme neoji kirawa. Utema is to injure, kirawa is a shrub. You know, these proverbs don't come from nowhere. They are not arbitrary. They're actually informed by people's experience. Kirawa is a shrub. If you take the bark of kirawa, the sap, you know, if you're injured here and you use a lot of plaster, you know, and then I'm injured and I take the sap, you know, I take this bark of kirawa and tie here, I will get cured faster. The antiseptic properties of kirawa are so strong. So what am I saying then? What I'm saying is, how do we know that this kirawa is not the one that will give us medicine for cancer, for HIV, and etc., etc.? So if you lose Kitaraka, and you lose this scientific information, you lose this scientific hint, the loss is not only for Taraka people. You know, if the saying was in Kamba, the loss is not for Kamba people, it's for humanity. Because if you produce that drug for, you know, for cancer, it will treat not only people in Ukambani, it will also treat people in America, etc., etc., etc. So some people might not understand why does UN spend so many millions, you know, protecting small languages? You say, well, why would they be interested in Elomolo? It's because there's so much information there, and that information is not only for Elomolo, it's for humanity. And as we talk about culture, we must know this, that the repertoire of human knowledge. The Kambas have experimented over the years. They know what kind of seed, if you plant it, will not grow. And that information is somewhere in a problem. That problem is somewhere in a saying.
Culture is something that we need to inculcate in our educational system. We are going through some educational change of competence-based curriculum, and I think we need to be able to ensure that cultural things and national values are included in that. I think universities started what are called common core courses about 20 years ago, common core courses. I think time has come now to ensure that we include culture and even arts and some of the things that we have indicated, creativity, as part of the common core courses. In America, they call it liberal education. You liberate. You are mentally liberated. But having said that, I think let's also not ignore, in my view, and this is my final take, is that as a country we are moving forward. As we move forward, let's remember, part of our culture is also to do with aspects of leadership, aspects of governance. And when you take governance and leadership and so on, there were ways in which we were identifying our leaders as communities. This is something that we need to begin to revisit and ask ourselves, how did we do it? And see if we can now use it to go forward. The second thing is that in our society, one of the most important things about culture is you never got anybody to be excluded from the society. Whether it was the sick, whether it was the white, and so on and so on, there was inclusivity. You never had people where there was food and they went hungry, although they didn't belong to the family. In Ukambani, you went, and the first thing, you are not asked, why have you come here? You are first of all given water. And then you sit down, you relax, especially if you have come a long distance. Tell us who you are and what can we do for you, and so on. And you can say, I was just passing through. Our culture had inclusivity. People were brought together. There was a way in which the young people activity was defined in our culture. There were things that young people had to do. They would go and hunt. They would go and bring the cows. The young girls would not do it, the men would not do it, etc. These are things that we need to begin to think and ask ourselves, young people, what is it that we are going to do so that at least we define what young people are doing, so that they can do two things. Number one is uplift our economy. Number two, ensure we have proper leadership and governance. And number three, and this is very important, that although we are a community, Kamba community, we are part of the bigger Kenyan community and the larger human global village. And therefore, these are things that I think need to be included in our educational system. I believe that moving forward, next year and the year after, we should have that required, cultural and linguistics teaching, and national values. National values. Who are we? A lot of us don't know. If I ask you, what are the Kenyan values that you believe in? Can anybody see you walking in the street in South Korea and say, this is a Kenyan, and so on? That's what we need to begin to do, so that we use our culture to promote our society, but most important is to build our nation and move forward. There is a role for young people. Let young people begin to participate. They always participated in the past, and this should not change. So thank you very much. I think Uwezo is doing something extremely important. Others should copy it, and others should embrace it.
Politicians and the politics should be part of the preservation of culture.
I should begin to speak in my language, and then you get an official interpreter. If you go to United Nations, you find Chinese. They will know English, but they speak in Chinese and then it's interpreted in English. So these are things that we need to begin to teach and inculcate in our young people.
We decided to promote English as a national language. And we promoted that at the expense of our indigenous languages. So in schools, it was illegal, and I think it remains illegal to speak Kikuyu, Kikamba, Ma language. I think we can eat our cake and have it at the same time. That is, let the children speak whatever language is in between their mouth. Let them speak whatever language in school. Here in the United States, we are making those arguments. Can we have multilingual society and still maintain each language? Yes, we can. And I think that's agreed. Some people argued that speaking these languages will compromise, will dilute English. English is the language of examination. So let's force our children to speak English. That's the argument. Let's force them to speak Swahili so that we can be one nation. No, please. One nation is not made so much by a language, by diversity of languages. With the language comes the culture itself. And so the curriculum should be turned around in order to preserve Kamba culture and other cultures, where it will allow people to speak their language.
I fully support this idea of Uwezo in Machakos, training people in terms of culture, including arts, including painting, including poetry, writing poetry and reciting poetry, including writing and telling stories, including writing drama, etc., etc. And I do hope that it can be replicated elsewhere. That we have Uwezo in Machakos, and then we have something else in Kisumu. We have something else in Meru town. We have something else in Kapenguria, and then we do that. We are not only going to change the economy of the country, but the values. Because through arts, you kill two birds with the same stone. You empower people, people get some livelihood, but also you impact values, because mathematics will not give you values and morals and ethics. It's a play, it's a poem, it's a narrative. It's Maria's song. What are these boys? Something called boys. What were they called? Kinamambo boys. Kinamambo. That is what makes a difference. Because technology and science alone, without the values, will not take any country anywhere. All the countries that have done very well economically, they also take culture very seriously. I mean, think of Japan, think of Korea, think of Germany, think of the US. When you hear somebody wanting to go to study in the US, it's not necessarily because of the American education. It's because of what you have been told through American music, through American novels, through American films. So sometimes when I hear economists talking, and they talk about capital, they talk about labor, and they talk about, I say, where is culture? Because values must be into it.
Tell Siengo, give my greetings to him and tell him to develop it more and to open up to other scholars and to criticize him, to encourage him. That is sort of it.
We have to sacrifice our time. We have to sacrifice our resources to redeem our abandoned culture.
I think one of the things that is very necessary as that program of teaching culture by Uwezo College in Machakos is done is there is some need of correcting the wrong perception that culture equals traditional rituals that are anti Christianity. Because I think that's the bit whenever somebody mentions culture, there are people who will only think of going to sacrifice in the forest, of killing a black chicken.
Modern generation tends to equate culture with religion, and actually small sections of religion, saying that Kamba customs is about devil worship or worshiping dead spirits. But the culture is not about worship. It's not about religion. Religion is just a small aspect of it. Culture is the ontology, is the totality of being, is the way of life of a people, including religion, language, and so forth.
Culture is not just sacrifices. It's not just sacrifice of blood.
One thing I would like us to understand very clearly is the complexity of culture. The culture is not a very simple notion.
So I think one of the things is first to demystify, traditions, and it's not like people are going back, they are running away from Christianity, because that's one reason why people would say, what will you teach me in culture?
There are groups that we can partner abroad that would like Tiengo to go out and give public speeches or lecture.
Question of murdering each other. A man, finds the girlfriend with another man, and you go and kill the girl. Traditionally, people will dance. The girls, the chest will be bare. The chest will be bare, and the skirt will be this short. But you know what? When people dance, the man felt nothing. If you look at the man's groin, nothing happens. So after the dance, Mudus goes home, Kalon goes home, nothing happens between the dance floor and the homes. This is why traditionally there were very few pre-marriage pregnancies. Very few in Ukambani and other places, very few. Because as the Westerners who told us that this is something to do with the sex. All that we knew is that this is a place where after the woman is married and she gives birth, this is where the milk will come from. Is the white people told us, excuse me, you see this? This is something you can enjoy. That's something you can enjoy. But before that, when I was growing up in Tharaka, the skirts were short. So when you hear somebody saying that, somebody has been harassed sexually because of a short skirt, wait a moment. Just go back 70 years in Ukambani and see how short the skirts that the Mondays were wearing. The black chest. But don't got any feeling at all. You just dance. You dance, just go home until you court the girl, you get married, and the girl will then become expectant as your wife. So what you need to do then is to try to explain to people why did things happen so well. I mean, why were there so few pregnancies before marriage, traditionally? Why were there few cases of rape, traditionally? Why were there so few cases of murder, traditionally? And for that, we need to go back to our cultures and teach them.
Have a body that will recognize all the different groups that are promoting Kamba culture. And one folk singer named Musyoka Amayu sang to that effect, that he wants competition of musicians, and he wants them to be given awards that are not coming from abroad but from the community. I think if we have something like that, we will be promoting the preservation of Kamba culture.